Karen, thank you so much for being with us today. You are the Vice President of Community Impact with the United Way of Pickens County, and you've been with the United Way since 2001. You currently lead their annual grant investment process, and you're also responsible for their work in improving third grade reading and reducing poverty in Pickens County. Prior to working for United Way, you were the Executive Director of Prevent Child Abuse, Pickens County. You have a master's degree in public administration from Penn State, and you're a certified volunteer administrator and certified grant writer. You joined Pickens Rotary in 2001 and has served as Club Foundation Chair and President. You're a multiple Paul Harris Fellow and an RLI graduate, and you've served as an Assistant District Governor for Area 12 in our district for 3 years, and you currently serve as the District Literacy Chair. So you're a native of Connecticut, and you currently live in Easley, South Carolina. So Karen, thank you so very much for being with us today. And I think you wanted me to share your slide. Is that
would be great. So
sure?
I don't have to talk and handle
Sure.
technology at the same
I
time.
understand that completely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Getting rid of my controls here, hide floating controls, expand that, and then we will go to that. And I think you're off and running.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for having me here today. And since we're, not a huge group, I have no problem with anyone asking questions during my presentation or interrupting me. So I appreciate that. And I also want to say, even though my background wasn't impressive, my bio, that didn't sound too bad, right? Or it doesn't sound like I've been around a long time, right? I think maybe that's what it is. The longer you're anywhere, it sounds most impressive, right? My job is the district literacy chair is to promote literacy work through all the clubs, right? For every club to be doing something in literacy. And surprisingly, there are quite a few clubs that don't. And I know that your club wonderfully is, and I appreciate that very much. And I know our DG does as well. So I thought I'd do a presentation today to give you some data, some statistics, sort of a foundation for why we're doing what we're doing, and then give you some ideas for projects and fundraising things that other clubs have been doing. So I'm ready for the first slide. Okay, we'll start with adult literacy statistics because that is sort of that's a good foundation for everything. So our most recent stats for South Carolina, about 22% of our adult population is illiterate. And that means either not being able to read at all, the definition of that is, or just unable to read even, basic prose or write, just the most basic of sentences. Our illiteracy rate, I checked this in 2003, was 15%. So we've actually gotten worse, not better, as time has gone on. We rank 39th in literacy out of our 50 states. So we're not at the very bottom. I know often we can be, but we're still nowhere near where we should be. And then 14% of adults in South Carolina do not have a high school diploma, and that is a good bit higher than the national average. And I've looked into why these numbers exist. It's not, COVID related because this has been persistent. A lot of the things that I found say there just isn't enough funding for adult level programs, for literacy programs for adults, not enough support for it. Also an issue with, people with disabilities, not enough specialized programming for them. And then there's also a generational aspect of it too, right? If your parents can't read, they don't read to you, they're on books into the house, that does trickle down to your children. There's all kinds of data that shows that, children who grow up and live with illiterate parents, I mean, they're going to more likely to follow down that same path as well, unfortunately. And I think we all know the consequences of adult illiteracy, low income, unemployment, underemployment, poor health, drug addiction, all kinds of research shows that those things all flow from adult illiteracy. And of course, incarceration as well. I did just read this statistic, 40% of the inmates in state jails did not get a high school diploma and struggle with literacy. So there's a connection with all kinds of negative societal issues with adult illiteracy. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so let us talk about literacy for children. So I was able to find our recent so I'm going to change my page here. Sorry. I'm trying to look at two things at once. Our recent test scores for children. So 46.5% of our third graders score below grade level in reading. That is down, which is great. And I know there's COVID, right, had a big impact in that, but that still means that almost half of our third graders are reading below grade level. And we'll talk for a second about why that's really important, and about the same numbers for our eighth graders as well. And then for kindergarten, testing not ready to enter, 62% tested not ready to start kindergarten. I did just find the 2021 numbers, and it's actually worse, with 64% testing not ready to start kindergarten. And what does that mean? They're looking at different things, basically the ability to, handle yourself in a kindergarten classroom. They look at very basic language and literacy for children. They look at basic math skills, and also development, your social skills, your problem solving, your emotional skills, self-regulating, and your physical development. They look at all those things, and that goes into kindergarten readiness. And we are woefully behind in that. The national average is a good bit higher than South Carolina for kindergarten readiness, and our numbers were low before the pandemic, but they're still low. And some experts say one of the reasons for this is because not enough quality childcare. So there are a lot of daycare centers that are babysitting, right? But there are nowhere near enough what they consider quality childcare, where you're actually preparing children to start school. So these are not big numbers, but they're certainly, they're impacts we can have on these numbers. So if we'll go to the next slide, please. So why do we talk about early literacy all the time, and why is that so important, especially third grade reading, which you'll hear about a lot, and that's why in my work we focus on that. Obviously, it's the foundation for all learning, right? If you can't read, you can't learn. You can't even do math or learn basic history or social sciences. And third grade is key. And this is what teachers always tell me, that before a child enters third grade, they're learning how to read. But after that, they're reading to learn. And so in third grade, if you can't read to comprehend, you're not going to be able to master a subject, and you're going to fall further and further behind. There's a lot of research that shows if you can't read on grade level by third grade, that it is almost impossible for you to catch up. You just keep falling further and further behind. And of course, those students, those young kids who struggle early with reading, they just lose their self-confidence. They start to hate school. They don't want to go to school because they're falling further and further behind, and they can't keep up. And so you can understand these little kids when they're in a classroom and their peers are understanding things and doing better than they are. It's depressing and it's sad, and they feel terrible about themselves. So that is why third grade reading is a focus for a lot of agencies who are working in early literacy. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, I did want to mention one other thing about third grade. In 2014, you may know that South Carolina passed the Read to Succeed legislation. I don't know if that's familiar to anybody. And that specifically is mandating that if children who are behind in third grade, they have to be retained, held back if they don't demonstrate reading proficiency. I mean, that became a law. And then part of that legislation was to mandate summer reading camps for third graders. Don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but that's mandated in the state. And one of the things that I've been doing in my work at United Way is we have the school district mandated summer reading camp, and as United Way, we partnered with them to form Camp IROC to make it a fun reading camp. So we partnered with the Y, so it doesn't seem like summer school, a punishment, right? So there's intensive reading instruction, but then there's also fun Y games and field trips and things to make children want to go and their parents send them, because even though the state is mandating this, parents unfortunately don't always send their children, even though their children are behind, which is a big frustration. But those summer reading camps, I'll just throw that in there, are an opportunity for Rotarian involvement. So in Pickens County, we've got 3 of our 4 clubs who volunteer during the summer reading camps, either just a one-time going in to read to classrooms, which is, it's a big deal for kids to have a guest speaker. And then we also have reading buddies who go in, a couple times a week, pair with a child or maybe two children throughout the whole course of camp to give them really that one-on-one special attention from an adult. And we have Rotary clubs who are doing that as well. So in your area, if you have district sponsored summer reading camps, those are, and they're very welcoming, at least in my experience, to have volunteers come in. So that would be an opportunity for you as well. Okay, so more fun statistics on this slide. If you students who can't read proficiently by fourth grade, 4 times more likely to drop out of high school, again because they're frustrated and school is not a fun place to be for these kids. Students who start kindergarten behind, which we just talked about, form the largest group of high school dropouts. Again, that's that slope where they just it's almost impossible for them to catch up once they get behind with reading. And also kids in school who have low literacy levels. Again, they're the kids who get sent to the office. They're the kids who don't show up to school. They're the kids who get in trouble after school. All of that is related to their low literacy levels. And again, their future limited income, limited opportunities for employment as well. So those are the not happy statistics, unfortunately. But now let's talk about the fun things on the next slide about what your club and other clubs could do. And some of these things I'm sure you already know about, but I'm hoping that there are a lot that are new, that maybe you can, your brains will be going and you can think about some fun activities. The first thing I tell every club is to assign a literacy chair. That sounds like I don't think you have one. I just looked into ActTV, but it sounds like you're already doing plenty of work in literacy, so I don't think you need one. But other clubs do because they need that point person to encourage them to, and to remind them about the work in literacy. But I don't think I need to remind the E-Club about doing that. You can raise funds, which it sounds like you do. We'll talk about it a little later. You can do some awareness and advocacy work. Also start forming relationships with your school district or particular school, which also sounds like you're doing, but a lot of clubs haven't thought about developing that long-term relationship. And that's a perfect opportunity to work directly with children, and schools I found are always very willing to have Rotary groups come in and participate. Start your own local project, whatever that might be, and then or partner with other clubs, which is something we do here in Pickens County because sometimes we're too small and we can't do it. And I don't know if the E-Club partners with other clubs or not for your project. You do? Okay, great. So those are on a an umbrella level things that you can do, and we'll on the next slide we'll get into some specific things. Okay, let me just ask real quick. Are you still, because I have some older data on what your club did, still donating books for little free libraries? Is that something you do? That's a
Yes,
great thing.
absolutely.
Okay.
Every week, yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then Rotary Reads the Classics. Was that a pandemic project, or was that not your club?
It was
Something with
started by
YouTube?
our satellite club in McCormick, and there's
Okay.
still a number of materials online associated with that. I don't know that there have been any recent updates.
Okay. I thought that was a great idea, but I'm assuming that was pandemic related, right?
I'm not sure about
No,
the
just something that
background.
they do.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's terrific. Okay. So let's talk about raising funds. So one of the things I've always thought of, and I have been a fundraiser professionally, is you always want to make your connections and find out what people actually want. I've heard of many groups who just go out and raise money for a specific thing, and then they find out that group doesn't actually even want that thing, right? So I never want to assume what the needs are. Always ask and form the relationships with organizations. It doesn't have to be a school. I'm sure you have a local First Steps office, Head Start, your library. Find out what it is they need first and then do the action following. One of my examples would be the dictionary project. Not sure if you've done that or do it. We did it for years, and then okay, Dolly Parton. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second too. Until our school district office said, we don't want dictionaries. We don't need them anymore. And so we were giving them dictionaries, and then apparently the school district didn't want it. So we stopped doing it for maybe 5 years. And then lo and behold, about 2 years ago, they reached out back to us and said, you know what? We really do want the paper dictionaries back in our third grade classroom. So like, okay, so we started doing it again. But then we made the mistake of not asking them every year if they still wanted the dictionaries. So I think we were providing them for a couple of years before they told us they didn't want it. So lesson learned for us in Pickens. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I have found in my work that my local and state legislators actually do want to hear from me, and they do want to hear from Rotarians, and they tell me that it matters to them to hear from their constituents and to know what we care and think about. So if that's something your club would ever be interested in doing, and or maybe you've had elected officials come and speak to your club, that's a perfect opportunity to tell them what you care about. And so early literacy could be one of the things. They assure me that they listen, so I'm just going to have to believe them that they do. I know you have a Facebook page. I know you have a website. You could certainly, especially during September, which is our Education and Literacy Month, put all kinds of information on there throughout the month. You can get all kinds of information from RI. I'd be happy to give you information too, just to get the word out and remind people that this is something we need to keep top of mind. You can participate in all kinds of community events. The week of the young child, usually through First Steps, has all kinds of activities. Those are in April. Libraries have events all the time, festivals all over the place. There is a local club that one of their literacy projects is they collect used books all year long. And then in the summer, there's, I don't remember what kind of festival it is, but they just have a booth at the local festival and they just give away all those books. Now, is that like a big, heavy space, needing project? Yes, but it's a great project and it's giving free books to people. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a fantastic idea if you have the manpower to do it. You could also, and again, this is a generic project, so you might already be doing this, making sure, especially in September, and you have me, but you could also, your library director, somebody from the State Department of Ed, different university professors. There are all kinds of folks who could give great presentations for you, especially in September. And I'd be happy to get you some names from folks too. I had a great speaker from the South Carolina State Library, the director, who gives a fantastic presentation from the library's perspective. So people like that are just interesting, different speakers, and like because you're a Zoom meeting, you could get anybody from anywhere. So just a little bit of thought on raising awareness and advocating. Okay, next slide. Okay, different projects. Little Free Library, you know about. I don't know, are they your little free libraries or are you putting, okay. Because that's another thing you could do is you could certainly, we have a club member who's a woodworker. He built one for us and put the Rotary logo on it, and that was really cool. You can also buy them. It's nice to have them with our emblem on it, I think, in the Rotary blue, and they hardly cost anything to buy. So that's a thought, is to have your own. Book drives I've found are another easy thing to do. One of the things we do. Oh, you've got your own. Oh, that's cool. She has her own little free library. Sorry, I'm looking at the interesting chat while I'm talking. Book giveaways. So I have found that businesses, that is a project they like to do, to have their employees come in and bring books. So I will do that just in my job, but also for Rotary, ask a local manufacturing plant, would you be willing to put a big box out and have people come, employees donate books. And also some small businesses, they like to do it, and retail stores like to do it, because people always have extra books, right? And they're just sitting there and they're happy, to get them out of their houses, but then give them to a good cause. And then you can do the book giveaway. If they're children's books and appropriate, you can give them to the school or a daycare or, anywhere. So that is a simple, really relatively no cost thing that you could do, a book drive. We have, now I'm just going to go through a list of some specific club activities that I know about. This is the Greater Anderson Club. They have school awards for most improved readers. They give them like the kids a little certificate, and they have a big lunch surrounding it. It's a way to, again, talk about the importance of literacy, make a big deal about it for kids so they feel encouraged for their reading and then they want to do better. Dictionary we know about. Is that something your club does or has done? Dictionary project? Okay. Depends on your school district if they want it or not. Um, Again, read to children. It doesn't have to be at a summer reading camp, library, in school. Lots of clubs do Rotary readers, right? Where they, I guess you could say, adopt a school and they're in there once a week or once a month reading. And it is incredible to when you have the guest Rotary speaker that kids somehow they pay attention. It's like you're this special invited guest to come speak to them, and they're excited that you're willing to take your time to come do that. And again, that's a very low cost thing to do. Now I know for those of us who are working, that can be difficult to get away during school time, but for those of you who have a little more flexibility in time, that's an amazing Rotary project. Dolly Parton, I know that there are clubs that do that. It's an amazing program. There is a cost to it, which a lot of people don't realize, that they think it's free, and it is not. If it's something that it's free to the children and the parents, but someone has to buy the books. So Dolly does not buy the books. Now you get them low cost and at a bulk rate. I think the last I looked, it was something like $2.37 a book or something, which sounds like nothing. But then when you multiply that by X number of children times 12 months a year, then it gets pricey. So if that's, so I would, yeah, making a donation to somebody who's already doing it makes much more sense to me than starting one. Cause we did look at doing that here, but we just, it was something like $60,000 just for the city of Easley for the year. And so we, that was not something we were able to afford to do, but it's an amazing program and gets books into the hands of children and in their homes, which is what we want more of. Book readings, recording on social media, which you know about, which I think is amazing. There are other clubs that do that as well, and especially that was a big hit during the pandemic. I think everyone's doing that less now, but it's still a really nice way to well, help children, but also publicize your club and get your name out there. And then program speaker book signing, which I think you do somehow, or do you donate a book for your speaker? Is that what you do? Sorry. Uh-oh. That's okay. I have a paper copy too if we get lost. But a lot of clubs will have their program speaker sign a book, a children's book with some inspirational words, and then give those books to a school or to some other organization that needs books. Now I know your speakers aren't in person, so that makes it a little more difficult. But are you giving books on behalf of your speakers? Did I read that
Yes,
somewhere?
on behalf of the speakers, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then did those go to the Little Free Library?
Yes, and
Okay.
since we have members all over the place, we get to cover a pretty broad area, and we also put a sticker in each book that includes the four-way test and then information about our club.
Oh, that's a great idea. So how do you, does the club buy books and get them to your club members, or how do you
We've had
physically
a
get the books?
combination of using club funds, and then we have two members who were extremely generous because they have a great passion about this program and have also contributed some of their own funds to keep it going.
Okay, that's amazing. We have found, in my club, in the Pickens Club, and I'm sure you found them too. There's a lot of like bulk book club websites, lots of places where you can get books, children's books, really inexpensively. And so that's one of the things that we've been doing. And since we're a physical club, we give them to a local elementary school, and it's amazing how happy speakers are. When you say, "Would you please sign this book?" They just love it. I don't haven't had any person who I just thought it wasn't a great thing. So I'm glad you're able to do that. It's amazing how sort of, creative the e-club is. But I think it's really great that it's not meeting a person is not an obstacle for you guys at all. I think that's wonderful. Okay, next slide, please. More projects. This is the Chester Club. They have also, adopted an elementary school and, kind of call themselves classroom parents, and they'll go in once a week or once a month they're always promoting literacy in the classroom, and they help host parties. They become part of that school, which is a wonderful idea. Lots of clubs will do back to school drives of books that schools, recommend, and also supplies. The Clemson Sunrise Club does that every year, like around the first day of school. I know last year they handed out things to 1,000 students, which I can't imagine the cost of that. But also a wonderful thing to be at the school giving supplies and books to children. Um, there are other clubs. I'm trying to look here. Clinton, who has more of a mentorship program in schools where they're meeting with a particular child and becoming their almost like literacy mentor, where they're reading with or being read to the child, and they're that regular adult supportive role, where they're working with that child and seeing them progress throughout the school year and being their cheerleader and support. And the school, of course, will identify the students who need that adult support. That again, that's something that would have to be a Rotarian who actually has the time to devote to doing that. But the impact of that long-term relationship with the child is pretty impressive. Okay, moving on. Another club, Fort Mill, they have just host an easy literacy picnic with students and invite their parents as well. The whole focus is on positive experience with reading and making it fun and talking about how critical it is. And then of course all the kids walk away with a book from the picnic, and they just hold that at the school. And again, a fun, not very expensive thing to do, but it's a way to promote literacy and develop a relationship with those children and their parents too. Okay, and then moving on to the next slide. I'm just giving you projects because you asked for projects. This is Indian Land Club Pause to Read. I don't know if you've heard about that program, with a therapy dog for children who maybe struggle for whatever reason. They're fearful or shy or struggle with reading or have a disability, and having there's research that shows that having that dog next to you where you're reading to, or the dog, I was going to say with the dog, but that doesn't make much sense, but reading to the dog can be very therapeutic and helpful to children. Now that's a very specific project where you'd have to have the therapy dog, but it's something potentially you could fund if you like that idea. There's definitely research that backs up that that's an effective method of helping children with reading. Okay, moving on. This is very specific. Lancaster Club provided these word kits to younger grade classrooms. And that, I know, has to be from them asking the school specifically what they want, right? That is not an example of a club just saying, we're going to do this and here you go, we're going to donate this to the school. That is them asking, what do you need? And the school came back, we need these word kits. Again, that's just a funding opportunity. That would be what do you need? Here's money to go do it. No idea on the cost of that, but that's just an example of, if you asked any school what they would need in terms of literacy help, they would give you a whole list of things, right? So I'm trying to give you some examples of things that have a funding cost, but then other things where you can just do, on your own for free, that are just as helpful. Okay, and then Rock Hill, they partnered with a local homeless shelter. Providing books and other learning supplies are probably not much in the budget for a homeless shelter. So they asked what they needed, and it was books for the ages of children that they have there, and other. I see that says learned. It should be learning. I guess I need to work a little bit on my literacy. Learning boxes and books for the chocolate center within the homeless shelter. You could also do that in a domestic violence shelter. There are other places like that which have limited funding who could really use supplies like that for children. And I know that they would be happy with used books as well for children. Those are things that in shelters like that, there's, lots of turnover. Probably, books come and go all the time. So if you have local shelters, you could certainly, for example, do a book drive and even donate adult books as well to shelters like that. A very low cost thing you could do that could make a big difference. We just an aside, there's a Rotarian in my club who's volunteering at a weekend camp for children who experienced or live in households where there's substance abuse. So children who've been through trauma. And the first few days at camp, they saw him reading a book and said, "Oh, where did you get that book?" And he just said, "It was my own. I brought it." And then they proceeded to tell him that they don't have books where they live. They don't have access to books. And how could they get books? Which is really, it's a very heartbreaking thing to hear. So he asked me, and of course, I have a huge supply of books that we use for Little Free Libraries. And so I just packed them all up and gave them to these kids. These were all used books, but he told me how happy they were to get them and how some of them just carry them around all the time. And so that, again, that's cost nothing. These are all used, donated books, but can make a big difference for children who, I don't know, in my mind, I think everyone has books, right? I have too many books, but I know that there are children who have none in their homes at all. So something to think about. Think about children who maybe are in need and are in places where books are going to be lacking, and maybe, you could reach out to them, and that could be a project for you moving forward. I'm just giving you things to do over the course of the year. Okay. And then my two last things, next slide, please, are specific projects that I just wanted to show you. This is a picture from Camp IROC, the reading camp this past summer, and this is something that the Easley Club did. They find a children's book author, usually South Carolina, and there are quite a few, pay for them to come speak to the children at camp. This is the author speaking this past summer. And then they buy copies of the author's book for all the children at camp, and she signs them, and the children get her book. And the authors then talk to them about, what it's like to create a story and write it, and the whole book writing process. And I never thought about it until I saw this in action, where the children in this moment are connecting. Wait, there's a person who wrote this story. There's an actual real life person. There she is, who thought about this story and wrote it. And now I'm reading it. And I don't know if they had that connection before. It really is amazing how much children love to meet authors of books that they read. That was a news for me. They're thrilled, and they do that every summer. And this summer they did pick an author from out of state, and I don't know why, but in the past it's been South Carolina children's book authors. And so that's another thing to think about, especially if it's just bringing someone, in from another county. It was the expense of buying the book, but because they bought so many that, there was a discount because it was probably a couple hundred children. But then just something else to think about, how meaningful that is for them. And they had tons of questions for her too on just how do you write a book and how does it happen? It was really a very meaningful moment. If you ever get a chance to see kids interact with an author, I would really recommend it. Okay, and then my last slide. I'm hoping I'm doing good on time. I'll be quick because I see it's almost 1. This is Rotary Readers, and I had to have one from the Pickens Club. That's the reader is Harold Alexander in our club. He's a former NFL football player, so you can't quite tell from this picture, but he's really big, and so he was very imposing going into the classroom, but in a good way. They were all like, "Oh wow, who's this giant coming into our classroom?" And it meant a lot for these kids in class to see this grown person, come in and talk to them. And it doesn't have to be in a school. You could do this anywhere where there's kids who have even 10 minutes to listen to you read a book. And we always encourage our readers, talk about yourself, talk about your job, talk about how reading has changed your life. How does that impact your job, right? Are you reading in your work? And to have all this connection with them. Why am I learning to read? Well, here's a grown person saying, this is how it's made me successful in my life. So I wanted to show you Harold, because he was great, physically imposing, but did a really good job. And then last slide, I promise, then I'll be quiet. Just a couple links for you. If you can go on our webpage, there's lots of information about education, both nationally and internationally. There's also a Rotary Action Group, BELRAG, which is a weird name, but it stands for Basic Education and Literacy Rotary Action Group. Anyone can join that. That's the link for that. Their goal is promoting literacy worldwide. So there's people in this Rotary Action Group from all over the world. And then lastly, if you would like a list of district club projects, I'm working on the one for this year, but I do have 2022. I'm happy to email that. I can email that to you, Candace, and you can share it with everybody just to kind of, get your thoughts flowing on other things that you can do. Because I maybe went through a quarter of what what the projects are I have on my list. So, okay, did I go over 12:58? How'd I do? I tried. I was
Oh
fast
my
to get it
goodness.
done. I know the
No,
Rotary
you
rules
were
a long
awesome. And
time, so
actually, I think we took up a little bit of your time, or I did it with a little bit too much chit chat at the beginning.
no, never too much chit chat. That's important.
Oh my goodness. I will tell everybody that these last two slides, especially in the follow-up email to this meeting, I'll make sure that this information is included. And I'm going to get out of the share now and then actually open up the floor to anybody who has a comment or question.
Just a quick comment, Karen. One of our district grants last year included donation of books to the BARC program in Anderson County. And the BARC program is part of their public library where they actually bring in dogs and they pair a dog with a weak reader because a child is more likely to read aloud, which is a huge building skill for literacy. They're more likely to read aloud to a dog than they are to a human.
Oh, that's so great. I didn't realize it was more, I guess I thought it was a very unique situation, but apparently it's not. That's really great to
Yeah,
hear.
and she was actually, I'm sorry, I'm having a senior moment. I can't remember her name at the moment, but she's actually a very, very good speaker. And I'd recommend her for any other Rotary program too that would need one.
Is she a Rotarian?
No, I don't think so, but she's I think she's a children's librarian in Anderson County.
Okay, I'm writing this down.
I'll make a note to get her name for you.
Okay, Anderson's close to us, so we could probably get here. Thank you for that information. I know they don't do that at our local library system, so that's really good news.
Yeah, and
Okay.
they had quite a list of needed books, so that would also be something a group of Rotary clubs could get together to do. I mean, it was an extensive list.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna, yes, if you know who that person is, I would love to. Okay, here we go. Okay, or read therapy. Okay, excellent. Whoever's
Thanks.
managing the chat.
One of the things that sticks out to me in a huge way is how you make sure that we're actually doing what people really want. And it seems like a simple thing, but it's so important. I will say that our two district grants this year, we did ask what the Mary Martha Services wanted, and then also the McCormick Elementary School. And that's so powerful to, actually what was really fun about it, especially the McCormick Elementary School, was the supplies that we never would have thought of in a million years. But the teacher said, "Hey, this is what we need," and that's it. Just I apologize because okay. Sorry, I was looking at, I actually have a surprise for you, and I sort of blew being ready to share it. So I'm going to do that here in just a second.
Okay. I like a
but
surprise.
in the meanwhile, if anybody, while I get my act together, if anybody else has a question or a comment they'd like to share.
Karen, I'll just share that we actually, with the Humane Society in McCormick, we just restarted a program where they're trying to get some of the younger kids and working through first steps and some of that to come and read to our cats at the shelter. To just
I like that idea
foster
too.
their reading and then just, give the cats some social interaction with children. where the kids will just come and sit in our larger cat room and just read a story with somebody. And so we're just relaunching that, and hopefully it'll be a successful start to a long-term thing. So
Well, because it's great for the animals, but it's great for the kids too, right?
Right.
I love that idea, especially because I get requests all the time from groups looking for volunteer opportunities. So I've written that. Oh, I've written that one down as well.
somebody needs to be read to on a regular basis.
Oh,
I think Diana has her hand up.
Diana, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to share more for Karen than our club necessarily. Back in St. Thomas, when I was with the Sunrise Rotary Club, one of the things we did every year was at Christmas time, the teachers told us what kind of book or the title of a book that they wanted to have their kids read as a class. And we funded for every grade, whatever book that was that the teacher had indicated, and put our Rotary stickers in. But most importantly, we went and read the book with the children. It wasn't a long book, but it was obviously age appropriate. And we did the same thing in the spring before school was out. So they had a book of their own to take home, because many of the homes, just as Karen said, have no books in them. And it was not only a matter of a book, but it was a matter of ownership of something that was theirs. And it really increased, or so the teachers reported to us, increased the interest children had in books, and in many cases, their ability to comprehend not only what the picture said, but what the words were communicating within the story. So I just share that. It was a pretty hefty outlay of funds, and if you were to do it today, you're going to run into the situation where you have an awful lot of books that are now ebooks, and you would have to be able to be sure that your children had access to a laptop or whatever they're using in the classrooms these days for media learning. But it proved to be wonderful, and it was most rewarding when you were the person reading the book with the children.
I'm sure it was.
Thank
And we
you.
have not experienced any schools telling us we don't want actual physical books. Now, one thing that's especially lately, you do want to get whatever book you choose approved by the school
Right.
district.
Oh,
And
definitely.
that, right? We did have, we a book, it was about purple penguins, and for some reason there was, I don't know, somebody made up an issue about I read the book 10 times. I could not figure out what could possibly be controversial about purple penguins, but there was a little, so, and we didn't do our due diligence
Well,
first. So
that's unfortunately very true today.
yeah, very much. You want to make sure it's an approved book for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I do think we have almost an unlimited opportunity with all the nonprofits, like you say, the homeless shelters and all those places. who,
Right. And there
are
would not be the
probably
rules.
delighted
the
to
school
have
district.
anything that they. I'm just, please do send the list of projects. I'm particularly
Okay.
interested, since we are scattered around, all those that people can pursue individually. It's so inspiring to hear what all of our fellow Rotarians are doing. And speaking of inspiration, I did want to share with you. So we do have our little free library books, and this particular one is going to be donated in your honor in recognition of the United Way Preschool Pages program in Pickens County. And
Oh,
3
that's so
copies of this book are being donated
Yeah.
to
And,
the
and,
program by us.
yes, and actually, this is the only time that, Candace, I don't mean to interrupt, but
Please do.
this is the only time it's actually not going to go through a little free library. We made a call to Poor Richard's bookstore there in your area, And so 3 copies of this should have been earmarked and or already delivered to the Preschool Pages program.
Oh, I feel really special and honored. Thank you so much. And look at that book. That's certainly a grumpy bear. Thank you very much. I was not expecting that. I can't wait to tell our person who runs that program. Oh, that's so great. And so those are, board books that we make sure all those preschoolers get because we're getting them young. We don't want to wait until 3rd grade, right? We want to get
Right,
them
right.
before they even start school.
Absolutely.
Yep.
At the
Thank you
bottom.
so much. That is awesome.
Well, and this
That is a great
recognition will
surprise.
go in the book along with information with the 4-way test and information about our club as well. So
Oh, thank you. That is a
you bet.
lovely surprise.
You bet. Our pleasure.